Well, you might have missed it, but this week there were 2 days set aside to celebrate a couple of the most significant and important industries in our country, agriculture and mining. These days of celebration are the brainchild of Gina Rinehart, Australia's most successful businesswoman. And they're designed to bring awareness to just how important and just how much under threat these pursuits are in this country. One man who was there for both events is Australia's best-known geologist, Ian Plimer. He joins me now in the studio. Ian, you're involved in the mining industry. You're a director of Roy Hill. You spoke at one of these conferences. What was the essential message of the conference?
The essential message is leave us alone to get on and employ people and keep this country ticking over, because mining and agriculture are critical to our living standards. If we don't have successful mining and successful agriculture, we are finished. And government has interfered so much with not only the red tape and black tape and green tape you spoke about, but tape from the UN, the blue tape. And it's become almost impossible for people to invest in Australia and to actually create work such that we can have welfare. So we have a situation now where you can have thousands of permits just to start a mine. For example, the Roy Hill mine needed nearly 5,000 permits to actually mine iron ore in an iron ore part of the state, in an iron ore state, in an iron ore country. Now, that is absolutely ridiculous. The costs are horrendous, and most of the regulatory requirements are duplication of other requirements, and they're just trivial. And just to give you an example of what a mine can do for the country, Mrs Rinehart's Roy Hill mine in the Pilbara has only been operating for a few years. Now, it's already paid $2.3 billion in royalties to the West Australian government. It's paid over $300 million to the local Aboriginal communities, and that's above and beyond the monies they get from state and federal governments, our taxpayers' money. They've paid $6.6 billion in company tax, which goes to Canberra. They paid $200 million in payroll tax. And here it is, you're getting taxed to employ people. I mean, that's just counterproductive. And then $1.1 billion has been paid by the employees of Roy Hill. And there's all sorts of fees, fees for bending over backwards, fees for having pink fingernails, and on we go. And the mining industry's got a multiplier of 5. So for every one job, there's another 5 jobs there with suppliers and with people who are making a contribution to that. So the contribution that one mine has made has created zillions of jobs. Now, you can put it another way. Hancock Prospecting pays a lot of tax. It pays enough tax for 31,000 police officers, for 38,000 teachers, or 42,000 nurses. Now, which person moaning and groaning about net zero or the coal industry or the mining industry, which person employs so many people? Now, what we have are basically unemployed people sponging off society, sponging off the producers, and trying to stop new mines and new agricultural ventures start. And the end result of that is government bends with the wind and imposes more regulation.
This is the thing, Ian. I've often said that government is the cause of most of your problems. If you think it's the solution, you're really a bit of a basket case, right? But they want to pursue this net zero dream. They need mines to do it. They need lithium mines. They need a whole range of other things that are there. Why do they make it so hard to tap into the natural bounties that, as you say, create jobs, generate huge profits for developers, of course, but also for governments? Why are they making this so hard?
Well, net zero is a direct attack on our farmers. The farmers do not have the strength of the mining companies. An individual farmer, after having spent a day outside in the sun, then has to spend hours filling in useless forms. It is a direct attack on those people feeding 80 million people in the world. And these people don't have the resources and the time to deal with this. Net zero is a killer for the farmers. It's also a killer for the miners. And we have these wonderful environmental people swanning around saying, well, we want more wind turbines. Well, a wind turbine uses 9 times more minerals than a gas turbine. So get it into perspective. Oh, they want to drive around in these wonderful electric vehicles. Well, they use 6 times the tonnage of minerals than an internal combustion engine. And here in Adelaide, we've just had a wonderful couple of days of internal combustion engines going on the street circuit.
Sensational, wasn't it?
Making a huge amount of noise, putting all this plant food into the atmosphere. That's just fabulous. In South Australia, we've made our plants grow. We don't have to hug them. We put all the carbon dioxide there from the races that were street races that were here. Now, government is actually trying to stop growth in this country by having so much regulation. We once had governments that were fearful of debt. Now they just kick the can down the road. We once had people who wanted to work. Now people are using their creativity to work out ways not to work and how to have someone who gets out of bed early to pay them to sit down and do nothing. We once had a great manufacturing industry. We used to build everything we needed. We have to import everything now. We've got a mining industry. Now, will the same happen there? Will we be able to say we once had a mining industry? Or did we once have an agricultural industry?
It's a great question. And the agriculture is also under threat. And as you say, they don't have the same muscle that the mining industry does to fight back. But we saw what happened in Holland, for example, recently, where the farmers were under attack for they're not allowed to use nitrogen, and they're trying to cut back the number of farmers that are there. And there's been a rebellion. They basically have elected Geert Wilders to say, no, we've had enough of this internationalism. And that's the blue tape that you're talking about. That's been passed on down from the United Nations and all these rabid green groups and Greta Thunberg that are telling us how we should be looking and be good stewards of our land.
Well, you get Wilders of the world, and even your new president of Argentina, they are regarded as far right. Why are they regarded as far right? They talk common sense. So we are having a political restructuring, and I will only support the environmental view when we see an emaciated environmentalist who hasn't been able to eat and hasn't been successful at hunting and gathering. They'd have to be naked, which is an absolutely horrible thought, because virtually everything we wear and use is made from the petroleum and mining industry. So these people are not only destroying the strength of this nation, but they're destroying the future for our kids. And this concerns me a lot.
One of the things that's been put to me, and I'll just go devil's advocate here, is that Australia is still an easier place to do business than a lot of other countries in the world. We don't have the geopolitical risk. We don't have perhaps some of the dangers that are evident in some more remote locations. Does that mean we'll still be an attractive place to invest internationally? I know you've signalled a warning about it.
There are massive delays. Now, if you're a junior company and you've found an ore deposit, then you have to raise finance. And to raise that finance, you then have to be trying to raise finance when nothing's happening and you're waiting 4 or 5 years for approvals. You do not invest in Australia for that reason. I work in South America, and most people say, oh, you know, this is Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid part of the world. It isn't. South America is far lower risk than Australia, and that's an absolute indictment on our system. It's a far lower risk. Yes, the biggest safety risk is that they're not as good at driving as we are, but that's your biggest risk, is driving. So Australia will be losing this investment, and if you've got an investment dollar, you're not going to hang around for 10 years before a country starts to get its regulations sorted out. You're going to put that money elsewhere, because while you're hanging around and waiting for Australia to get its act in order, your money's not earning anything.
Someone in the mining industry told me that they've seen projects in Cuba that are easier to manage than they are in Australia, and that is an indictment.
Well, that's quite right. Now, we've gone green, we're powerless, our electricity is really on the edge, and we're defenceless. We're actually right in the middle of destroying one of the greatest countries in the world by absolute stupid regulations and by politicians pandering to those who have got no skin in the game. There is no environmentalist out there who does the charitable work that Mrs Reinhardt does. There is no environmentalist out there that employs as many people and pays as much tax that goes into the coffers to employ our police and teachers and nurses. And I really have a fundamental objection to people who are unable to get out of bed, sitting on the couch, going to demonstrations, which they say are great fun, and having a great moan about people who have made sacrifices and who are sacrificing.
And using fossil fuels to glue themselves to the roads.
Well, I think we shouldn't use a solvent to unglue them. Because the solvents are made
leave them with a
souvenir.
That's right. Ian Plimer, thanks so much for joining me
me
tonight. It's great.